Road 77. Part 1. In the southwest of Arizona, among silent red canyons and sun-scorched cacti, there's a road even truckers avoid. On maps, it's marked as an ordinary route, Highway 77, but locals call it something else, the Death Road. Officially, the 60-mile stretch between the towns of Gillen and Drusk was closed in 1998 after a series of unexplained disappearances. People, vehicles, entire families vanished without a trace. No bodies, no wreckage, not even tire tracks. Only scorched patches on the asphalt, as if the ground had been burned from within. But the legend goes much deeper. Whispers of the Wind. In 2023, a young journalist named Ellis Brennan was assigned to write a piece on the disappearances along Highway 77. His editor, a cynical skeptic, dismissed it as clickbait nonsense. But Ellis was intrigued. He arrived in Gillen and rented a room at the Dust Bowl Motel, rumored to be the last stop of the few surviving witnesses. At the motel bar, he met an old man named Jed. He was sipping warm beer and staring out the window like he was watching for something. When Ellis mentioned the highway, the old man turned pale. "You're really going there?" he whispered. "I lost my wife there. And my son. We were headed to Drusk in '97. I dozed off for just a second. When I woke up, I was alone. The car was fine. No doors, no people. Just the radio, hissing, and voices. At first in English, then in something ancient. And someone was laughing. Not a person. I never went back." Ellis recorded every word. The story matched dozens he'd read in police files. He decided to head out at dawn to film the stretch of Highway 77. Maybe this was his big break. The lonely path Ellis left at 5 a.m. The cracked asphalt stretched ahead, empty. On either side, nothing but cacti and the burnt-out husks of cars, buried in sand and time. At mile 13, something strange began happening with his recorder. It kept taping, but the sound vanished. Only silence remained. Even the crunch of tires on gravel seemed muffled. He got out to check the equipment and saw a figure in the distance, a woman in white standing in the middle of the road. He waved, yelled, but she didn't move. As he approached, she vanished, as if crumbled into dust. On the asphalt beneath where she had stood, he saw letters scratched into the surface. Infernum. The gloom. As the sun climbed higher, the sky suddenly turned black. No clouds, no wind, just darkness, like smoke from a massive fire. His car stalled. The dashboard clock froze at 6:66, a time that shouldn't exist. Sweat covered Ellis's skin, and his heart beat erratically. Then, a knock from inside the trunk. Struggling, he opened it, not to find gear, but a boy, naked with white eyes and blue-veined skin like roots. Slowly, the boy raised a hand and pointed to the desert. "They're coming." The ground trembled, as if something alive was moving beneath the sand. Ellis didn't know what to do. He slammed the trunk and ran blindly. Minutes later, he found himself back at the car, though he was certain he'd run in the opposite direction. The house at the fork. At the fork where Highway 77 split into two dusty paths stood a house. Abandoned, but a light glowed inside. He stepped in and found himself back in his newsroom. His editor sat there with dead eyes and said, "Great story, but not for everyone. Stay, Ellis. You're part of the road now." Ellis turned. The door was gone. Only desert remained. Out of time, did time pass? Was there ever a road? Ellis lost all sense of reality. He wandered the looping highway, where every turn led back to the start. He heard footsteps behind him. Slow, heavy, as if a giant creature followed. Sometimes he looked back and saw himself, walking from the other direction. He realized the road doesn't kill, it traps. It turns the mind into a loop, a mirror, a cage. The final recording. 2 months later, his car was found in the desert, a place where no road existed anymore. Just sand. The camera inside was still running, but the footage was strange. The video played in reverse. In the final frames, Ellis stared into the lens and whispered, "She's not a road. She's a throat, and we're inside." Road 77, Deeper Than the Void. Part 2. The Receiver. 3 years had passed since Ellis Brennan disappeared. His story and the footage found in his car became legend. The video spread online, only to be taken down within a day, at the request of government authorities. Those who saved a copy either vanished or forgot they'd ever seen it, as if their memory had been scorched. But one person didn't forget. Her name was Lena Brennan, Ellis's younger sister. She was a student of psychophysiology, a skeptic to the core, but her brother's vanishing shattered her worldview. For 6 months, she studied everything. Police reports, testimonies, satellite images, even dark web material that referred to Highway 77 as Transition Number Altunja on Halloween night, 2026. She drove out there. Not for proof, for Ellis. The map that isn't when she arrived at the supposed fork, she found nothing. Literally. No road, just a flat spread of gravel and sand. Her GPS showed an ocean in the middle of the desert. She pulled out a modified analog receiver designed to detect lost radio signals. On 77.7 FM, she heard, "Lena, you can't go alone. He's watching." Then the device burned in her hands. Sparks seared a symbol into its metal. Delta, an inverted triangle. The entry A flash lit the darkness. Lena turned. On the horizon stood a house. The same house from Ellis's footage. She stepped inside and found herself in a classroom. A boy sat at a desk, drawing a road. "Who are you?" "I used to be the one who warned. Now I'm part of it. Want to find your brother? You must cross the threshold." "What threshold?" He pointed to the board. Instead of chalk, clawed scratches spelled. "Everything that enters becomes reflection." The door flew open. The void pulled Lena in. Shadows and loops. She found herself in a twisted version of the Arizona desert. Like space warped in smoke rings, everything repeated. Cacti, sounds, her own footsteps. Lena understood. She had entered the loop. She walked for hours until she saw a figure in the distance. Ellis, the same one. But his eyes glowed white, his movements not his. "Lena, you came, but you must leave. They're already inside." "Who?" "The roadmen." He pointed to a dune. Figures rose from the sand. Old road workers, faceless. Their helmets marked with the Dell symbol. Their shovels and picks were made of bone. The roadmen they didn't attack. They simply stood surrounding her. One stepped closer and spoke, not with its mouth, but inside her head. You are continuation. Ellis, the receiver. You, the bridge. We are not enemies. We are the cleaners of the path. But you broke the boundary. You interfered with the transition. Now, you must stay. To fix, Lena felt her body dissolve, like she was turning into sand. Ellis screamed, "Don't look at his face!" Too late. One roadman removed its helmet. Beneath, endless void, like a black hole. Lena fell. The transition. She awoke in a car. Night. Silent radio. GPS dead. Next to her, Ellis. Was it really him? Or the thing that now wore his shape? He turned and said, "We can leave. But only if you accept. Understand that the road is not a place. It's an idea. And you are its new bearer." "What do I have to do?" He handed her the keys. The engine started. The asphalt ahead, smooth as glass. "Drive them. Those who are ready. But warn them. Not all can handle the truth." Epilogue. A new legend. In 2027, a private tour company appeared in Nevada. Infernum Roads. They offered extreme tours across abandoned highways of the American Southwest. Every participant signed ironclad waivers. Only one route was truly special. Transition 77. At sunset, one driver, one tape, one chance. Those who returned said strange things. The road spoke. I saw myself many times. I know how I'll die. She woke up. And a few never returned at all. And then, on the radio, among the static, a voice whispered, "You're next. You're next." Road 77. The Threshold Part 3. The finale repetition. Lena Brennan was no longer an ordinary human. Ever since she returned from the loop, her perception of the world had changed. She no longer saw time as a straight line. Days repeated. Conversations looped. People around her seemed like mannequins, repeating the same actions. She led tours along Route 77, but not for money or fame anymore. She gathered those who had heard the call. People with hollow eyes, who more and more often found her on their own. One evening, standing at a deserted crossroads, she saw them. 3 figures. A girl with burned scars on her face, a man in a military uniform with no insignia, and an old woman who didn't blink once. They all said the same thing. "We saw the Nabla. We are ready." Lena nodded. That night, the transition began. The transition code from DARPA archives, recovered by hackers decades later. It's known that the symbol, observers called it Delta Down, first appeared in documentation for the Transliminal Pathway Project in 1973. The goal of the experiment was to create a transport artery outside physical space through the metaphysical field of collective consciousness. But the road didn't simply appear. It awoke. It wasn't created. It responded. And soon, it slipped out of control. Everyone who entered the Nabla corridor became a resonator. Their memories, fears, and choices shaped the path. And those who couldn't withstand it were devoured by the entity lurking beneath the road. Yet no one called it by name. It was known as the One Below, not a god, not a demon. It was a remnant, a side effect of a closed universe squeezed out beyond the borders of reality. It sleeps beneath layers of perception. But when too many minds focus on a single place, like the legend of a mysterious road, it stirs. Every transition is its breath. Every disappearance, its food. And now, Lena brought it those who were ripe, those whose minds had fractured, those who no longer feared the end, the confrontation. But one day, she brought the wrong one. A boy, 7 years old. His name was Thomas. He didn't just hear. He looked directly at it. When they reached the center of the highway, the very place where time flows like oil, the boy stopped. "He's not eternal," he said. "He's alive, and he's aging. He's in pain. That's why he feeds." Lena felt the space around them distort. The asphalt swelled. Sand crawled upward. Tentacles erupted from the ground, made of road signs and bones. A voice roared in her head. "Stop him! He must not speak." But Thomas continued. "We're not his food. We're his mirror. If all roads are loops, then is the drain. He's a system error." He pulled a camera from his backpack, pointed the lens at the center of the road, and hit record. The recording on the footage, you can see. Space twisting, darkness breathing. And in the center of the road, an eye like a starry sky, framed in a mesh of veins and asphalt. And when Thomas looked into it, and the camera kept recording, something impossible happened. The eye closed, and the road vanished. Aftermath. At that exact moment, millions of people around the world lost memories. Hundreds of newspaper archives disappeared. Files about Route 77 were deleted even from physical drives. Only one thing remained: Thomas's video, uploaded to a dead zone of the internet. The video shows only the boy and an empty road. He says, "We closed his eye, but there are others. He is not alone. Inside, there's a system, and it's breaking down." Epilogue. The symbol now is no longer just a symbol. It's a mark, etched on asylum walls, scratched into desks, inked into skin, found on those who've lived through something they can't explain. Those who hear frequency 77.7 FM know he's no longer on the road. He could be anywhere. If you're reading this and time feels strange, if your reflection isn't always you, if you hear whispers in the vent noise, listen closely. You're next.